Did you know that St. Luke's University Health Network, based in the Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania, has been recognized by the U.S. government as the highest performing health system in the United States for quality? You heard right. St. Luke's #1 recognition affirms our status as the top leader among the most respected healthcare providers in the nation, including Houston Methodist and the Mayo Clinic. To state it simply, if you want to receive the best care when you go to a hospital, come to St. Luke's.
Study and play come together on a Windows 11 PC. And for a limited time, college students get the best of both worlds. Get the Unreal College Deal. Everything you need to study and play with select Windows 11 PCs. Eligible students get a year of Microsoft 365 Premium and a year of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with a custom color Xbox wireless controller. Learn more at windows.com/student offer. While supplies last. Ends June 30th. Terms at aka.ms/collegepc.
Hello, everyone. Today, we remember Captain Ed Mamet, a proud United States Marine, a dedicated member of the NYPD for over 40 years, a trusted partner on our podcast, and most importantly, a true friend. Ed was one of the smartest men I knew, tough, strong, never afraid to speak his mind. He was not a yes person. He told you exactly how he felt, whether you wanted to hear it or not. And that honesty was part of what made him so respected. He stood firm in his beliefs, carried himself with strength, and earned the respect of everyone around him. But beyond the badge, beyond the titles, Ed was loyal. When a friend called, he was there. No questions asked, through good times and difficult ones. You can always count on Ed. His service to his country and to New York City will never be forgotten. And neither will his friendship, his wisdom, and his strength that he gave to all of us, fortunate enough to know him. Rest easy, Captain. Semper Fi.
This is Cop Talk, talking crime, cases, and backing the blue. Now, here are your hosts, Captain Ed Mamet and Detective Kevin Schroeder.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Cop Talk. I'm Kevin Schroeder, your host, and unfortunately, the sad news, and I'm sure everyone has heard by now, my co-host, the famous Captain Ed Mamet, has passed away. Our condolences and thoughts and prayers go out to his family, and it's a sad day for Cop Talk today. We really remember the great times we've had with Ed Mamet, and I have some great guests here today who are friends with Ed Mamet for many years. I have retired Sergeant Rory Capra.
Hello, Kevin. It is a sad day for us to be here, unfortunately, under these circumstances.
And we also have the famous Judge Richard Weinberg, who has a podcast here at WABC Radio. He's part of the WABC Radio family. He also does a show with John Katzmatidis and Rita Cosby at 5 p.m. every day, Monday through Friday on WABC Radio, and also has his own talk show called Let the Record Show. Judge Weinberg, welcome.
It's an honor and privilege to be with both of you gentlemen.
So, as I may have mentioned before, I had the privilege of meeting Ed Mamet many years after the police department. As we know, he was a U.S. Marine Corps, as well as a 40-year veteran of the New York City Police Department. And he was, I believe, a second-grade detective. And then,
Yes, he was.
Which is rare, and then became a sergeant, lieutenant, and captain.
Yes,
and a captain for many years. I did not know him on the police department. It may have been a good thing, because sometimes we would bump heads. But me being a union delegate and him being a boss. However, I got to know him through John Katzmatidis, owner and operator of WABC Radio, many years later. And we became very good friends. And then, of course, we started our podcast. It was just a thought we had drinking in a bar one day. And next thing you know, we're speaking to John Katzmatidis about it, who's owner and operator of WABC Radio, and also Chad Lopez, president of WABC Radio. And here we are 3 years later. I mean, whoever thought? We didn't think it would go anywhere, but we're having fun with it. We had a lot of fun with it. And Ed really enjoyed doing the show. I mean, he would call me every day, hey, who do we have coming on? And I'd say, oh, we're going to have this one. Oh, I don't know if I want him. Let's have somebody else, because Ed was Ed. Very, very strong with his opinion. However, but we've been blessed. We've been blessed to. I've been blessed to have known Ed Mamet for many, many years. I wish I knew him on the police department. I know him probably about 10 years, and but here we are to chat about the great Captain Ed Mamet.
Yes.
Rory.
Well, Ed, where do we even start with Ed? Ed had essentially a 40-year career. He was a force du jour. He was a very dynamic individual in his own right. Eddie was appointed to the police department in 1959. Wow. In February of 1959, worked all the way through until December of 1998. Wow. So essentially 40 years in the police department, and about 2/3 of that was in investigations of some type or another. He was in the Detective Bureau. He was assigned to special assignments. He went through the ranks. He came up as he started as everybody does. He started as a cop, a police officer. He went to detective, and then he got promoted in each rank that he went up from cop, detective, sergeant, lieutenant to captain. In each one of those ranks, not only did he get promoted to those ranks, but then he also got a secondary promotion within those ranks as a specialty assignment. So as you would know well, Kevin, when you're a detective, the coveted position to begin with, but to get then to second grade or the first grade is an honor and a distinction even in and of itself. Ed became a detective second grade and then became a sergeant. He was a sergeant with what they call SDS, which is the sergeant with the money. So he was a detective squad supervisor. He was then a lieutenant, and then he was designated what they call in our police department a lieutenant detective commander. So that meant he was in charge of the detective squad, and then ultimately a captain. So he had quite the career in terms of that. Right. But he also, as a captain, still, as the police department does, when you get promoted, they, for a time, send you back. He actually worked out in patrol. He was out on patrol in several boroughs. I believe he retired actually out of Brooklyn South. But he was actually an XO in 4 different patrol commands.
Wow. And, getting back to his career again, being a detective, promoted to second grade, which is rare, not unheard of, but rare that a second grade detective would take a test and become a sergeant.
Yes.
And then he was a sergeant with the money, right?
Yes, he was.
Special assignment money, and which is like grade with the sergeants, right?
That's correct.
A bump up with the money. And then he takes a lieutenant's test, which he was making lieutenant money already. Yeah. So, and then went up to the rank of captain. Interesting, very interesting.
Well, you know what, Ed, I'm sorry, Kevin, another thing that people don't know with Ed, he also did a time in highway. Now, can you picture Eddie with the crushed hat and the leather and the crossover strap and the boots? But Eddie actually did time in highway. And as we know, he lost his leg. Yes,
right?
he did.
And he fought to get the job back.
Yes, he
Correct?
did. And won.
And won. Most people, God forbid, if that happened to them, they'd want to move on, get disability, move on. He sued to come back.
Judge, were you aware of that? That he had the lawsuit? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I knew him differently than you gentlemen. Mm-hmm. So I'm retiring from the state Supreme Court at the end of 2016, and John Cassidy's hired me as general counsel to the Red Apple Group, which is the umbrella group, for the holding company for all of the business interests, including WABC, and as chief counsel to John. And I go to an event and seat at a table, and there's this little guy. He's a little guy, by the way.
Yeah,
he's a dynamic little guy. He's a Marine. He's a tough guy. He's a little guy. And he stands. He's very feisty. He's the right word, Kevin. And he looks at me like, "Who are you?" and John, because that's the kind of guy Ed was. And John said, "Well, this is Judge Richard Weinberg. He's just retired from the Supreme Court. He's becoming my chief counsel." So he said, "Where'd you work? What'd you do?" He's taking my deposition. I said, I was the general counsel of New York City Council, chief counsel of Speaker Peter Vallone. And then when Peter didn't become mayor and I didn't become chief counsel of the mayor or corporation counsel of the city, my door prize first was being appointed to the criminal court by Mayor Giuliani. And thereafter I moved up and I became a Supreme Court justice. So he says, "I have to find out more about you." So not only is he trying to take my deposition, he also tells me now he's into discovery on me. Yeah. To find out who I am, who do I know, what's my story, what's the book on me, what am I about? And he does the book on me. I did it with one of the colleagues who you both know, Judge Bruce Bolter.
Oh, sure.
And I know Bolter for decades. And Bolter says, this guy Weinberg is okay. He's a good public safety, law and order kind of judge. So that was good enough for Eddie Mamet.
Yes.
Now, what I loved about Eddie is he was a public safety, law and order guy, but he cared deeply about people and about doing the right thing. I also loved about him is he loved politics and government and public policy. And since I love government and politics and public policy, we would exchange war stories. And the wonderful thing about reaching a certain age is you say, thank God there's somebody who knows what the hell I'm talking about. Because a lot of the people we're talking about are long gone.
It goes over the head. Sure.
A lot of the stories that you're talking about, this people look at you, who cares?
Right.
But Eddie and I would resurrect those old days. We knew a lot of the same personalities, a lot of the same issues. We knew people who had been elected officials, who had been mayors, other judges, prosecutors, and we were able to exchange these stories. And I loved talking to him about that. And the other thing about him is he had a love for theater in every sense of the word.
Yes.
He's almost a theatrical character, I think.
Yes.
But his cousin, I think it was his cousin,
Yes.
is David Mamet, the great playwright. So I told him the following story, which he said, I got to get you together with David. I said, well, let's see about that. So the story is I was on the board of the Atlantic Theater Company, which was founded by Bill Macy and David Mamet. And they got a hold of me one day and they said, they're doing a play, and the play is about a judge and a prosecutor, and there's a courtroom scene. So the star of the play sat on the bench with me for about 3 hours and watched me operate in a Supreme Court part. And I had a great time doing it. I met the whole cast. Mamet was out on the coast, so I never met David Mamet. But he says, Mamet's going to love to meet you since you did one of his plays, and the play was a great success. Yeah. And they dedicated in the playbook, they thanked me very much for cooperating. So I'm sitting there with my wife in the theater, an opening night in this play, and it's about a prosecutor and about a judge and what's going on in the courtroom. And all of a sudden the judge has a nervous breakdown and rips off his clothes and starts carrying on. And my wife's looking at me and saying, and they used you as a model for this? So I told that story to Eddie, and he thought it was the greatest thing in the world. He says, I'm phoning David. I'm telling him that a real judge said, what the hell is this all about ripping your clothes off in a court?
Yeah, that's amazing. We actually had David Mamet, his cousin, famous screenwriter, twice on our show in the past 3 years, which was nice, thanks to Ed. I said, your cousin should have wrote a story about you, Ed. You know, he'd be a great character for one of the stories. But Judge, so now I could tell you this. So many years ago, the captain, I guess when he was doing a background check on you, says to me, hey, you know this judge? I said, which judge? He goes, Weinberg. I'm like, yeah, I know Richard Weinberg. I know him actually 30 years. I said, we're very good friends. I said, know him a long time. Great guy. Why? Oh, he's a good guy? Yeah, he's a good guy. He's a great guy, as a matter of fact. Oh, okay. I said, why, is there an issue? He goes, no, I just want to know who he was. I don't really know him well, and I just got to know him, and I want to make sure he's okay. I said, he gets a pass. He's great. He's a good guy, and he's a good friend.
Just a pass?
Well, exactly. That was Ed, though. That was Ed. That was the investigator inherent in Ed. You know, anytime he met anybody, it was almost like a mini interrogation, you know. And actually, just to go back to some of his career, that was something that was recognized early on with all his experience in investigations. The job, actually, which a lot of people don't know, but sometimes some of the executive levels, they will loan out some of their trusted executives to work in other agencies. And that happened with Ed twice. He was sent out. He went to the New York State Department of Education to run and kind of revamp some of their investigation unit. And they handled thousands of cases of misconduct with teachers and school officials. He did that. He also worked for a time in the New York City Department of Personnel, essentially doing the same thing. And he was responsible principally for reorganizing their whole investigative process. He actually kind of almost introduced computerization to them, because before that they didn't necessarily have computerized case files and all that. But Ed was was very efficient. He was always recognized for his managerial and his analytical skills. Right. So he would do that. He'd come in there, as you know, Judge. He would come in there. He probably would have made a great attorney because he loved to write and he loved to read.
But I have to tell you something. He was a multifaceted person. Yeah. And what always struck me about him, and he was a character. There's no doubt he was a character. He was a beloved character. Yeah. And it was always my honor and privilege to chat with him. And every time I had the opportunity, I would do that, and I would take the time, however busy I was, to talk to him because I loved being with him. Yeah. And one of the things that I know you, Rory, and you, Kevin, and I shared with him is his great love of America.
Yes, absolutely.
Ed Mamet was truly one of America's great patriots.
Yes,
he would do anything to serve his country. As Rory, as you pointed out, he was in the Marines. And as Kevin just pointed out, how many people having lost a leg and would get a full disability for getting paid, and they could do something else in the security business, for example, or some other gig that former police officers or high-ranking officers can get. How many people would want to go back on the job, put your health, your safety, your life on the risk to serve? There are very few. Yeah, Mamet was a very special guy.
Well, Judge, to follow up with that, and Kevin, you know that for sure, Eddie was always a fighter for the causes he believed in. He was. Yeah. He was a Marine. And what a lot of people don't realize is, I'll tell you a Marine story about Eddie, but he was a Marine, and he also, after the Marines, he actually joined for a time the Army National Guard. So that's kind of what they call sometimes changing colors. But he actually did both. Yeah. But he was always proud of his national service. He was, of course, extremely proud of his service in the police department, and he was also a joiner. He was part of the Honor Legion of the police department. He was very proud of his Jewish heritage. He was a member, I think, the lifelong member of the Shamram Society. Yeah. So he was always involved. And
and Rory and myself, and I'm sure you, Judge, as well, we're on his email list, and he would send out at least weekly, "Hey guys, there's an event coming up. Would you like to be my guest or be our guest, or we're being invited by whoever. I can bring 5 guests. Would you like to come? Law enforcement personnel." And we would go to these events. I mean, we've been to so many events with Ed, that he was pretty much somehow in control of or invited to. But he'd be always watching the door, because you'd be sitting there at a table with him, no matter where it was, whether it was Cipriani's for WABC Radio every year in September, or wherever, someone's birthday party or whatever. And he'd be watching the door because he'd say, "Who's that guy? You know that guy? Who's that guy? Who is he with? He was always checking you at the door for sure. That was it.
Well, I want to tell you 2 quick things related to his Marine service. And this is a very little known fact probably by anybody. The Marine Corps founded in 1775. From 1775 to 1971, that's about, check my math, Judge, that's about 196 years. Okay? Mm-hmm. In 196 years, there was only one Mamet ever inducted, enlisted in the Marine Corps.
Really?
And guess who it was? Our Ed.
Captain Ed.
Our Eddie, Captain Ed. He was the only one for 196 years.
The captain.
Yeah.
The captain.
So there you go.
I used to call him El Capitan.
El Capitan.
El Capitan. That was my nickname.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, Kevin, and I'm sure, Judge, you probably heard this, because sometimes we'd go to meetings or we'd go to symposiums where we'd have a very dignified, important guest speaker speaking, and sometimes Ed would inadvertently forget to turn off his phone.
But he'd tell you to turn off your phone, right?
He'd tell you to turn off your phone, and he would forget, and all of a sudden, just when the speaker is getting to a critical point, the phone would start to ring. And what was his ringtone? The Marine Corps hymn.
Yeah, yes.
And it would. So it's ringing, and then people are looking around. They don't know whether they should stand up, sit down, and Ed would try to quickly, hurriedly turn it down or turn it off. Sometimes he'd turn it up and get louder.
Yeah, it's true. But on this podcast, when we'd be taping, he'd tell everyone, "Now make sure you turn off." He always had the rule.
Always, yeah.
Even with me, he'd say, "Make sure you turn off your phone. We can't have that here. Next, his phone's going off. The Marine Corps hymn.
I remember I was twice, you and El Capitan had me on as a guest on Cop Talk.
Yes.
And he always said to me, he says, let me prep you before you go on, because I want to know if you're prepared to do this. I said, okay, Al Capitan. I said,
that's all right.
I said, you can prep me. That's okay.
Yeah.
I said, what do you want to talk about?
Yeah.
So he'd lay out 2 or 3 or 4 issues. I said, okay. He said, well, what are you going to say about that? I said, it's a confidential communication, Ed. You'll hear it when you hear it.
Yeah, yeah. That's the captain, right?
The captain.
Yeah, it's just amazing. But he would, and like you said, Judge, he would give you a script and say, listen, this is, and then he'd be the first to say, he'd also tell guests sometimes as well, now don't be rambling on, give us a chance to, ask a question. Don't keep rambling on, you know what I mean? That's what he would say, But he was hilarious. He was a great.
Ed always loved a cop. That.
Oh, yeah.
Ed always loved a cop. So, and as you said, Judge, he was a people person. A lot of people don't necessarily know that because he would generally present a gruff exterior and
rough around the edges.
But once you got to know the guy, he would open up and he'd be very warm and he'd be very receptive. And
to your point, Rory, one of the most generous, kind people in the world.
Yes.
If you were a friend, there was nothing that he wouldn't do for you.
A couple of times, like a virus or whatever, I had to take medication, like we all do, right? We get prescriptions you got to take. And he would say to me, did you take your medicine today? I'd say, actually, I forgot, but thank you for reminding me. Because you got to take your medicine every day. It's not going to work. Like whatever you would take a medicine for, whether a virus or whatever, being the flu, whatever. Through the years, he would yell at me. He was like my father yelling at me about, hey.
Didn't he give you medical advice too?
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes solicited, sometimes unsolicited.
Yeah, he would mail me. He would also, after he would tell me about what I should be doing, he'd also mail me an article, actually hard mail article. But yeah, he was hilarious.
And as you know, one of your frequent guest contributors, Dave Giordano, who couldn't be with us today, but when he was going through a certain medical procedure, Ed immediately jumped in and gave advice and counsel, and then wanted to know what the doctor said. He was reading the chart. He wanted to know what was being said, and he said, "No, that's no good. Go back and recommend this or do that." He'd tell him he would be giving advice to the doctor.
Yeah. But Ed, a very, very sharp guy, very intelligent.
Oh, very
intelligent.
And loved politics.
Yes.
Loved politics. And got involved in political campaigns for some people who shall remain nameless.
Yes.
Right? He did. He did.
And
very closely.
I say to him, Eddie, I said, I know you know a lot about politics. I know you like this guy. I said, but he doesn't have a chance. Why are you wasting your time and your effort? You should be concentrating on a different guy or a different issue. He said, he's my friend. I'm going to be there with him. He has a good message. I'm going to stand by him.
Yes. Ed's very loyal person. Very loyal. Very loyal guy. I mean, you could call on him. You couldn't call him in the middle of the night because he had rules as regs as well, where don't call me before 9 a.m. because I'm having breakfast, and don't call me after 9 p.m. because I'm in bed. However, those 12-hour period of the day, you can get him, and he would do anything for you. And he only stopped driving a couple of years ago. I remember when he would drive to the studio.
He used to drive to the studio.
Yeah, he had his handicap pass. And sometimes I would pick him up. Sometimes you and Dave Giordano would pick him up to go to a function or come here to the studio. It's just, Ed. What a character.
And, Ed, just touching on, because you reminded me about the handicaps. I think the judge had mentioned about, he had lost his leg and he had sued the job to get back on, to still keep working full duty. I don't know if people are aware, he was also a recipient of the Theodore Roosevelt Award.
That's right.
And there's several different categories. There is one specifically for police or public servants. But he was a recipient of that. That's right. And the idea behind that award is to give it out to people who suffer from a handicapped or a serious illness, but despite that, they still continue on and they provide public service and they keep going. And that was Ed. That was part of who he was. And he was a very proud recipient of that award.
It's funny you should mention, I didn't know Ed had that Theodore Roosevelt award.
Yes, he did.
But I'll tell you, he came into my office one day, which is, as you know, is on the 5th floor of this building.
Yes.
From the studio. And he comes in unannounced, sits himself down. He did that a lot.
Yeah.
If I wasn't in my office, he would bring in a cup of coffee, a bottle of water, sit down, hang out, make my office.
Captaincy.
Right. Yeah. make my office his home. I was happy to let him do it.
Yeah.
If he needed a place to hang up his coat, there's always room. So he comes in one day and he sits down, and I had been down the hall talking to John Caspatese about something. I walk in, there's Ed. He says, "I'm glad you're here." I said, and where else would I be? It's my office.
Yeah.
He said, I'm glad you're here. He said, did you hear that the Museum of Natural History is taking down the Teddy Roosevelt statue?
That's right. He was very upset about that.
Yeah, thank you, Rory. That's exactly right. He says, this is one of the great patriots, one of the presidents who made America great, one of the great environmentalists.
Yeah.
Somebody who took on the trusts and made America a fairer place and a place of opportunity. Mm-hmm. Truly a great president, Teddy Roosevelt.
Sure.
They take down his statue over some political correct nonsense.
Yeah.
Because like me, he's a big opponent of wokeism and political correctness.
Right.
He wasn't interested in figure out which of the 17 pronouns one should use.
Yes. Yeah.
True.
And then he came to me, I remember, after one Supreme Court nominee who later went on to the court, who also should remain nameless, as being interviewed by the United States Senate Judiciary Committee. And they want to ask her if she knew the difference between male and female, a man or a woman.
Yeah.
And she couldn't answer the question. And he says to me, I don't understand that. How do you get somebody so stupid to go on the Supreme Court of the United States? There's no difference between a male or a female.
Yeah.
I said, it is a problem. It is puzzling, Ed.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. I know after we would tape, sometimes he'd say, let's go see the judge. Let's go hello and say. And I said, okay, if they're up there, we'll say hello, But you're right. He would just come in, sit down. If you weren't there, he'd wait for you to come back. And, but he loved chatting with you all the time.
Oh, he did, because you know what? He used to say that you never stop learning. Everything is always a learning experience, and he really admired the judge for for his intellect and for his skills and
my
abilities.
stories, probably
and your
my
stories.
stories.
He loved. No, he did. He loved it.
He's going to write a book.
But Eddie himself was a very educated man.
Oh yeah.
He graduated St. Francis College in Brooklyn. And he had a master's degree actually from I think Long Island University as well.
Yeah, he only had the master's degree.
Yeah, but he always he always valued education, and he actually wasn't like, as a lot of cops do. He became like an adjunct professor. He taught for a time in John Jay. He was I think also in the Institute of Technology. So he taught in a few places as well.
Yeah, I think from my knowing Ed, the captain, his favorite rank on the police department, I believe, all due respect to the sergeant rank and every other rank, was detective.
Oh, absolutely.
I really enjoyed being a detective, a New York City detective,
Well, there's something about that mystique, Kevin. You know that,
Yeah, and then he was fortunate enough to be a lieutenant in charge, I believe, the 9th Detective Squad.
That's correct.
Which is the Lower East Side, right?
Yes.
As we know it, LES, Lower East Side.
Yes.
And he loved that. And I'm sure I didn't work for him down there, but I did speak to I did know a couple of detectives that did work under him, and they said he was a great commanding officer for the squad.
Tough.
Tough, but good.
But good.
Good.
Yep.
You had to do your work, and you had to do what you have to do, but he's got your back, and it was all good. Now, was he the president at one time of the Sharm Society?
I think he was. I think he was at least a board officer. Yeah, I don't remember if he was president, but I think he was a board officer.
So when he would bring up, he would always joke with me, because I think I mentioned this at his funeral. So when I came on the job, my rabbi, so to speak, was a first Jewish female to make chief, Gertrude Schummel, very, very good friend of my family's. And she's the one that got me wearing, my command when I came on the job. And he used to say, you see, the Jews took care of you, not the Irish. That's what he said to me, But then I used to joke at him, because I say, you remember, right, of the Shalom Society? He goes, not the Shalom Society, it's the Sharm Society.
Sharm Society.
He used to always, say, break my shoes. Yeah. But yeah, Ed Mamet, Captain Ed Mamet will be missed. Final thoughts on the memory of Ed Mamet?
Well, you know what? We touched on it just very briefly, but we got to talk about his great love of unlike most cops who shy away from media. He saw that early on as something to promote police work, to promote public safety, and to get out the message of what police do and the necessity, the need for police in society. You know what? And he developed a love of that, and he would go on as commentator on television, Channel 9. He would go on certain radio stations, like WNYC, I think it was at one time. But then what almost became the media love of his life was WABC, because he would often say that one of the best days he ever had was the day he was introduced to John and Margot Katsimatidis.
Exactly. He loved this radio station.
Absolutely loved it.
If you,
And Cop Talk, he
Judge,
loved.
if you call the captain any time of the day when he was awake, and first of all, you'd call him on his cell phone. He'd say, "Hold on, I got somebody else on the other phone." He always was on working the phones. He actually had a home phone. Not many people have a home line.
That's correct.
Right, but he had a home line.
Only us old timers still
and his
have
cell
that.
phone, and he'd be working the
Judge,
phone.
you have one? You got a landline?
I do.
There you go.
I believe in landlines, by the way. I think you should have what's going on, right? But anyway, so he would, and that would be him, and he would just be like, "Okay, let me get back to you." It was just amazing working the phones. But then he always had in the background WABC Radio on and Fox News.
Yes.
Always had WABC Radio on, always. And he would tell me, "Hey, did you hear they promoted our show today?" I'm like, "No, I didn't. I wasn't listening. I mean, I love WABC Radio, but I don't listen 24 hours a day." But he did. Even when he was sleeping, the radio was on.
Okay, your seat will be safe amongst the three of us and the hundreds of thousands of people listening to this.
Exactly.
And you know what? When the point that you touched on, where you said he had a certain time schedule where he'd tell you, "Well, don't call me after this time or after that time." But when he knew he was going to be on, like when he did back, I think in the early 2020s or so, he would occasionally be on Sunday mornings with the Cats Roundtable. He would call me at 7 o'clock in the morning and say, on a Sunday, and say, "You got to put the radio on. I'm going to be on. I'm going to be on. Listen for me."
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
True.
I'm like,
true.
Ed,
Well,
I try not to get out of bed before like 9 o'clock on a Sunday.
But you know what his other great love was? And you guys know because you come to those lunches, the Police Athletic League lunches.
Yes.
He absolutely
Yes, he did.
loved that. He loved that organization.
Yep.
He loved the lunches. To Rory's point about being connected
Yes.
to the larger world and being a social person and to try to educate people. He loved the kids. He understood in terms of the presentation of members of the department how they're just trying to help people live decently and safely. He understood that.
Yes.
He understood as the next generation that should inculcate these values. And so he used to go to those lunches, and he used to constantly work the room. You'd think he was running for office.
Yeah.
But he's working the room, meeting everybody, introducing people. He loved to do that. But he loved the kids. He loved that organization.
Yeah.
Yes,
That's
he
a
did.
great organization. Police
Yeah, it
Athletic.
is.
It is
It really
the
is.
PAL. Well, I was a member of the PAL growing up, Duncan Center on the West Side. PAL, played roller hockey with the PAL on the West Side. Very, very good organization. For the
And John Cassidy is the
kids.
chair.
Yes.
John is the chair.
John's the chair. And then years later, we're going to some lunches for the PAL, which is great.
Sure.
But you're right. He'd be at an event, whether it's the PAL luncheon or another event. And you say, "Kevin or Rory or Judge or Dave Giordano, come here. I want to introduce you to somebody." He'd walk all the way across the room, and the guy could be talking and deep in a conversation. He'd push somebody out of the way and say, "Hey, meet this guy."
Yeah.
That was the captain. That was the captain. But I want to thank Judge Richard Weinberg and Rory Capra for being here today. Unfortunately, Dave Giordano couldn't be here, but we'll have him on again to discuss, to speak about some great stories about the famous Captain Ed Mamet.
Yes.
A true New York legend.
Yes, he was.
Absolutely.
A true New Yorker. Absolutely.
True New Yorker, true, and NYPD veteran, and also a U.S. Marine. He loved the Marines. He loved the NYPD. He loved his family.
Yes, he did.
So, anyway, Captain Ed will be missed. I know I miss him. I know everyone here misses him. And we'll always remember Captain Ed Mamet. Please keep him in your thoughts and prayers as well. His family in your prayers, and so they can get through this as well. And until next time, Captain Ed Mamet, it's end of tour. It's end of watch. Rest in peace. Until next time, I want to thank everyone for listening. You can subscribe to Cop Talk if you like what you hear. And as Ed would say, we're
Get ready, Staten Island. It's time to celebrate 5 years of Very Hawks baseball.
Tuesday, May 19th at 10:30 a.m., it's morning baseball. Wednesday, May 20th at 6:30 p.m., have a pawsome time at Bark in the Park. Thursday, May 21st at 6:30, it's Pride Night with $5 Bud or Bud Light draft beer. Individual game tickets start at just $12.
Visit VeryHawks.com now to lock in your seats.
on social media. Social media.
Social media.
God bless you. God bless America. God bless law enforcement throughout the country. And God bless our U.S. military. Thank you.